Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, we get to cover a football game again this weekend, so that's going to be fun. It's a primetime game, which is like our third favorite time slot for games to be, but that's kind of just what they're doing every week now, so that's fine. We get to cover a football game. That's the important thing.
Well, and it's a night game, and it will prepare us for the next night game, and then that will prepare us for the following night game, and then eventually we become mole people who can only exist at night.
Yeah, the body clock thing is great unless then all week you have to get up at 6 a.m. to get your kids on the school bus. And then the body clock thing is like, nope, it doesn't actually help at all. It just keeps ping-ponging you back and forth. We're working the night shift. We're third shift now. I'm not sure how that happened.
I just wish TV thought about the people more. Like, thought about the people that it affected more when they go into these, things and decisions on who to put on TV at night. What about, Tom, the reporters, the people who make the game what it is?
They're thinking about people. They're thinking about George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, Alexander Hamilton, Andrew Jackson, Benjamin Franklin. Who's on the 50? Is that Grant? Feels like it's Grant. They're thinking about all those people. They're people, so that's something.
All of the former presidents, Alexander Hamilton, all of those guys. So yes, Tom, it is Toledo week. I'm not sure that it's actually a week all in itself. Let's just call Toledo game day. It's a Saturday, 7 p.m. kickoff. I think maybe exactly like 7:06 or 7:09, something like that. Because we know it can't be exactly 7 p.m. But it's going to give us an opportunity, Tom, to see exactly how good these Toledo Rockets are. And were you aware that Toledo this season is giving up, on average, about 58 yards passing per game? That's to Long Island U, and
Long Island, yes,
and UMass. So some terrible accents from both of those teams, I'm sure. Gave up 48 yards passing to UMass last week. And if you're impressed by that, Tom, please don't be, because they opened the season against Tulane and threw for 17 yards. So, yes, UMass this season, their quarterbacks 11 of 28 on the season for 65 yards with 3 interceptions.
So it was 17 yards and then 48 yards. So what I'm hearing is UMass football passing on an exponential growth curve. They're going to be throwing for 3.2 trillion yards by the middle of November, and everyone's going to be like, who saw this coming? This guy, Big Don Brown. When you can have combine Don Brown with the offensive explosiveness of UMass, just pray you're not on their schedule late in the year. That's all I can say.
Yeah, and that was a terrible rabbit hole for me to go down as I was trying to figure out, how did UMass actually rush for 200 yards against Toledo? And it's because they can't do anything else. They literally cannot do anything else. And they rushed for 205 yards on 54 carries against Toledo. And the fact that they had 54 rushes is, I think, more concerning for the Rockets than the 205 yards, Tom. And as it relates to the Ohio State running game, I'm not expecting 54 rush attempts for Ohio State, but if they can't get off the field against UMass when they know the run is coming, how are they going to get off the field against Ohio State's running game?
Well, they'll do it by, slowly matriculating backwards towards the end zone they're defending, and then seeing Ohio State with the ball in that end zone, and then going over to the sideline. You get off the field one way or the other. No one in college football history has had an infinite drive, and it won't happen again on Saturday. So, that's one way to get off the field. Not the preferred way necessarily, but it is a way to get off the field. But it does feel like, Ohio State has wanted to run the ball more. Ryan Day talked after the Notre Dame game about how really, probably should have run the ball a little more than they did. It feels like this might be a get-right week for the Ohio State running game, which is not, has not exactly been going poorly so far, but it feels like this might be a real get-right week for that offense on the ground.
Yeah, it's interesting. Ohio State is 9th in the Big Ten in rushing, averaging 170 yards a game. Now, 2 games is not a lot of data to go through, but you look at Minnesota, averaging 302 yards rushing per game with 12 touchdown carries already. They are certainly committed to the run. But when you look at the per carry average, Ohio State bumps up to fifth at 5.57 yards per carry. So we know they're getting yards when they want to run. I wonder if this is a week where they can really just wear down an opponent. Toledo runs a 3-3-5, and so they've got to do some maneuvering to be able to hold up at the line of scrimmage against the run. But they do that with some quickness, and they like their linebackers. Dallas Gann, of course, everybody knows, but they've got other guys there as well. But I think this is, Mayan Williams and Travion Henderson should be able to do pretty well in this one. And Ohio State needs a big running game. Like they showed some toughness against Notre Dame, but I think you have to revisit how difficult it actually was, because we saw Notre Dame lose to Marshall. So I think you need to start continuing to prove yourself in the running game here.
Yeah, for sure. Because I think, you go into that Notre Dame game and it's a top 5 matchup, and we're talking about the fact that it's a top 5 matchup. If you were still calling that a top 5 matchup, and you're still talking about that as, Ohio State has a top 5 win, it's like, this is the kind of stuff that people get on SEC Network people for doing. Look, they have 17 top 5 wins this season. It's like, well, there aren't 17 teams in the top 5, so that's probably not true. The Notre Dame game definitely, after watching them lose to Marshall week 2, boy, that game looks has a very different light to it. And it feels like Ohio State is maybe a little more unproven in a lot of areas than we probably thought beforehand. And, I don't think I have any real concerns for the Ohio State rushing attack at this point. They have been consistent. There are areas for opportunities for improvement. Talked to Ross Fulton about that a bunch on the Thursday morning show. There are areas where you could, the Friday morning show, going up Thursday night. What idiot puts up a show the night before? It really is very confusing. That person is terrible at everything. But, the Friday morning show with Ross Fulton talking about, there's stuff that there's some linemen who've missed some blocks and that kind of stuff. And there's just, sometimes the running backs are bouncing the ball outside and trying to do a little too much rather than sort of taking where the play should be going. So that, there are opportunities for improvement. But, if you've got good production on the line and you have opportunities for improvement, that's great. That's what you want. This is the time of year when you should be, seeing improvement, and I think we're going to see it on Saturday.
I think the good news for the running game is, while you may have some instances of guys bouncing it out, you're not seeing what we saw in 2018, where J.K. Dobbins is trying to hit home runs and Mike Weber is fuming that he's not getting carries. So you've got 2 running backs that are pretty happy or satisfied, happy enough with the situation. They're okay sharing, and they're effectively doing it, and they're both productive when they get in there. So when one guy comes in, it's not like things drop off. You've got a guy who does different things and still does everything he does well. And it's hard for a defense to get a feel for that when different guys come in, and, Travion Henderson is the fast guy. Mayan Williams is the power guy, but that power guy will also make every single person on that defense miss and make them look like fools, and then still beat them into the end zone. So I think I'm with you. I'm not concerned about the running game. All of the pieces are there, and now it's just you continue, as Ryan Day says, get better each day. This is an opportunity for that running game to get better, for Travion Henderson to show the patience that he has talked about, that his offensive line has talked about, for this offensive line and this running game to get 6-7 yards a carry and look like the running game of old that Ryan Day has had in the past in 2019, 2020, when they led the Big Ten in rushing. I'm looking at the Notre Dame game logs. Ohio State rushed for 172 yards against them. Marshall rushed for 219. So I think that goes back to what we were saying, where some things need to be proven a little bit more, and you can't just base everything off of Notre Dame. Tom, I led in with the Toledo passing game, their pass defense, giving up 58 yards or whatever passing per game. Should Ohio State fans be concerned here that the Buckeyes will not be able to throw the ball?
This is one of those things I wish I had looked up before we recorded our bold prediction show, because it'd be like, Ohio State is going to throw for at least 4 times as many passing yards as UMass did last week. Yes. I suspect that the step up in competition from LIU and UMass to Ohio State is going to represent a substantial one for Toledo. I would guess that the quarterback play, the offensive line play, and arguably the wide receiver play will be better this weekend than what they have faced prior to this. So yes, I don't think there's a real big concern. As far as concerns for this weekend for Ohio State in the passing game goes, I think it's reasonable to wonder if there might be a little bit of a slow start if, Jackson Smith and Jigba and Julian Fleming and maybe Cam Babb is coming back too. If you got a couple of those guys back and there's a little rust. I don't, this is not going to be like weeks and weeks to get in sync again, but maybe there's a little bit of a rust, getting back up to competition speed and all that. So maybe there's a ball behind Jackson Smith and Jigba in the first quarter, and okay. But yeah, I think I would expect them to really be spreading the ball around quite a bit to the different wide receivers. You sure hope Julian Fleming can play. That would be very nice to see him out there. Good to see Jackson Smith and Jigba out there again, because this is a real opportunity for them to have a little bit of a warm up before you have a real significant challenge next week, potentially against Wisconsin.
Yeah, if there's going to be rust, getting everybody involved again, re-involved, then you want that rust to be shaken off in this game, including Cam Babb getting out there, which may be a possibility, which would be great to see, and finding ways to get everybody involved. Ryan Day said on Thursday he was even so impressed with the young guys that they're trying to work ways to get the young guys in there with, I assume, Jackson, and how to do all of these things and make everything fit together and still keep Mecca and Marvin Harrison really, really engaged. And I don't think that's going to be an issue. It's just the timing issues that we saw in the first game. Will we see some more of those in this one? And, I think a lot of that is maybe being rushed, be it the routes or the quarterback. Toledo has 2 sacks on the season, and one of them is a cornerback blitz. So it's, the other sack is split between 2 defensive tackles. So it's not like the pass rush has been all that. Of course, when you're playing UMass, there apparently is no pass rush because they don't throw the ball. And, who knows what Long Island does. Long Island does. They, complain to the manager a lot, I assume. But, overall, this is going to be obviously a completely different animal for the Rocket defense. And they haven't faced an offensive line like this. And then, I assume there's going to be some blitzing with this 3-3-5, but Ohio State's done a good job of picking up the blitzes as well, which we know.
Yeah, Ohio State's given up, I remember 1 sack against Notre Dame and 1 sack against Arkansas State. I mean, maybe there was a second one against Notre Dame, but they have consistently kept C.J. Stroud clean for the most part. And C.J. Stroud, to his credit as well, has done a good job avoiding the rush, getting out of the pocket. There's the perpetual consternation about C.J. Stroud not running enough. But C.J. Stroud has used his legs in the way that I think he probably should use his legs, which is get away from trouble, buy yourself a little more time, let your wide receivers get a chance to get open, or your running backs or your tight ends get a chance to get open, and then get the ball out to them. Because C.J. Stroud is not going to make anyone forget Michael Vick in terms of the running game. So there are plenty of guys who are out there who can make guys miss in space and can do have breakaway speed. So between the offensive line playing pretty well, Stroud, probably saving them a sack a game with his elusiveness in the pocket. That doesn't seem like that's going to be a big concern for Ohio State this weekend.
Yeah, Toledo has one interception on the season. Not necessarily a huge impact there because they haven't really been facing any kind of passing game. So the Ohio State offense, obviously, with the clear advantage there. The Toledo offense, as it relates to the Buckeyes, they've got a dual threat quarterback in DeQuan Finn, who has led the team. He's leading the team with 138 yards rushing this year, completing about 61% of his passes, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception this season, through I think 18 touchdowns and just 2 interceptions last year as the starter, which is pretty impressive that you're a first-time starter and you are that careful with the football. I think his care, he'll need to be just as careful this week, Tom, but I think it's going to be much more difficult as he's being pressured from all different kinds of sides. And this is one where, do you worry more about containing or do you worry just more about affecting him and trying to force him into mistakes?
I think, Jim Knowles, the way Jim Knowles has been aggressive with things, I think you're going to try and force him into mistakes, and you're not worried about keeping him in the pocket. I think they're going after him. They have been pretty aggressive so far. The defensive players that we've talked to seem to like the fact that they've been aggressive so far, and it's worked for them. I don't you get the sense that they're not, I don't think DeQuan Finn's running for 250 yards, even if they are aggressive and he gets out of the pocket a couple times. Jim Knowles seems to very much recognize the trade-off of you're going to be aggressive, you're going to try and make big plays, get off the field quickly. And if that means giving up a big play every once in a while, he recognizes that is part of, that is a risk you're taking if you're bringing zero blitzes or you're attacking a little bit more. He seems perfectly willing to take that trade-off. So one thing that's, going 18 touchdowns, 2 interceptions is very impressive, but it reminds me a little bit of the Justin Fields 2019 41 touchdown, 3 interception season, where, there were times where Ryan Day kind of, you want to take care of the ball, but also you got to be a little more decisive. You got to get the ball out. And sometimes you're holding and you're waiting for the perfect moment to throw it. I don't know how many perfect moments to throw it Toledo's going to have on Saturday. So, either you're going to be holding the ball too long, or you're going to have to try and force the ball into maybe smaller windows than you're used to doing against, MAC level competition. So it'll be interesting to see how DeQuan Finn adjusts to that. And, does he just, if he doesn't see what he likes, does he tuck it and try and get it with his legs? Or is he willing to try and maybe push the envelope a little bit in terms of fitting the ball into smaller windows?
Yeah. And at which read do you leave? Is it after the first read? Is it after the second? Like the progression probably is not getting to 4 or 5. It might be 3 max and then get out of there. And they're going to, I assume, throw a lot of quick passes as well to try to help him out. Ryan Day talked about how this is the third quarterback they've faced who is a dual threat guy this season. And basically it just comes down to being assignment sound for each defensive player, because there's a guy for the quarterback, there's a guy for the running back. Like, just do your job and they can go ahead and be aggressive. And he can, and I don't want to say lose contain, but if he escapes, there's still somebody waiting to pick him up and there's still guys defending. But in the secondary, they have to remain aware of where the quarterback is. Secondary, the linebackers, they can't lose sight of him. And because once you lose sight of him, then, you're lost. And then the quarterback can take advantage of where you aren't. And so, this guy that can escape, leading the team in rushing, will probably have a couple of big plays, on third down, extend the drive. What I like about what we've seen from this defense, though, is they can give up a big play, and they can give up like a 27-yard run from the quarterback on this one, and get into into Ohio State territory. But they just reset. Like the last play does not affect them the next play, and I think we'll see some more of that this week. I do expect some plays to be given up, but it's hard to compound the plays against this defense.
We talk all the time about cornerbacks needing to have a short memory. This whole defense feels like it has a short memory, and a lot of that is just confidence. And, at this point, there's no reason for them not to be confident. They've only given up 1 touchdown through 2 weeks, so sure, you should feel like you're not going to give up a lot of points because you haven't given up a lot of points. They've only given up, again, the 1 touchdown. If after that first week, we talked to some of the guys, and, that first Lorenzo Styles, that long play on the first drive, first play of the game, Lorenzo Styles gets the ball down into field goal range. And, there were guys who said that would have been a touchdown drive after, last season. And then they kind of circled the wagons and figured it out. And now you're stacking, good drive after good drive where they have given up 3 points in the second half between the first 2 games. Like, that is sort of a Jim Knowles hallmark, is you start the game, and if the game doesn't start great, that's okay, because they gave up 10 points against Notre Dame in the first 20 minutes of the game. They gave up 9 points against Arkansas State in the first half. And then in the second half, 0 points and 3 points. They know, okay, Jim Knowles has got this. They believe in him. He believes in them. They believe in each other. And that helps you put those bad plays behind you, where no one is freaking out if they give up a big play, because they know that is just something that is a byproduct of the way they're playing defense this year. You're going to give those up sometimes, but by playing that way, you're also going to have it pay off where you're being aggressive. You're getting sacks. You're getting TFLs. You're putting the other opponent behind the chains. You're getting them off the field on third down. And, you do that often enough, you're feeling pretty good about yourself and your defense, and it feels like that's kind of where they are right now.
We saw the Ohio State secondary have their issues with Champ Flemings, the slot receiver for Arkansas State. Looking at Toledo's wide receivers, and Demir Blancumsey, Tom, 13 receptions on the season, 88 yards. a lot of these quick screens that aren't really hitting. And I think that's going to be an issue where Ohio State just needs to continue making tackles that Long Island has done and that UMass has done, and you should be able to contain him. And no other wide receiver has more than one catch, except one other guy has 2 catches. Like, this is a passing offense that has not really done much yet, and so they should not be able to do much against Ohio State. The running game, they're averaging 230 yards rushing per game. This is 5.5 yards per carry. They, as I said, Daquan Finn is leading them in rushing. Now, they've got 4 other guys who all have between 12 and 19 carries on the season, and I don't know exactly who they're going to rely on most. Probably the guy who is getting the job done, if there is one, and they may be going through, it may be every drive where it's somebody new. You're just looking for something, and I'm not expecting them, Tom, to be all that successful running the ball. I think the Buckeyes should hold them under 100 yards, barring some long one by Finn that alters skews everything.
It does feel like you're not going to necessarily be able to line up and just run the ball at Ohio State, but you might get some on a broken play where Finn could finish the game with 5 carries for 15 yards, but he's got a long of 27. But he's had 3-4 sacks to take off of that yardage. So it does feel like if they're going to hit a long one, if they're hitting a 20-yarder, it's probably a quarterback scramble or a broken play or an 18-yarder or something like that. That's where they may have some area where they can find some success. But just lining up against this Ohio State defense and running the ball just right at them, that has just not worked for anyone so far this year. And I think as we said earlier, you're kind of viewing the Notre Dame game a little differently. This is not a college football playoff caliber Notre Dame team like we thought it could be at the beginning of the year. So, they're not quite in the Michigan camp where it's like, well, they've killed everyone they've played, but they haven't played anyone. They played someone, but they haven't played anyone real proven at this point. So this will be probably not really another great test per se. I think that may come next week against Wisconsin, where you kind of, if you're holding Wisconsin to 3.5 yards a carry or something like that, that means something. This should just be, if Ohio State holds Toledo to 3 yards a carry or something like that, that's kind of just sort of what you're sort of expecting, and that's just kind of like just like check it off the list and move on to next week kind of performance.
Yeah, Ohio State is 11th in the nation in rush defense right now, but again, it's 2 games, and when you look at the teams in like the top 15 of that category, it's just a who's who of you shouldn't be here, and you don't need to look no further than the number 1 rush defense in the nation. Tom, do you have any idea who that is right now?
Let's see. I'm going to say, I don't know. Is it Toledo? I don't know.
No, it is James Madison, who allowed 12 yards rushing to Middle Tennessee State. That's pretty good. And 9 yards rushing to Norfolk State. So, yes, they are leading the nation, allowing 10.5 yards rushing per game. Rutgers, second in the nation, allowing 24 yards per game. Miami, Florida, number 8. UCLA 9, 10, Auburn, Ohio State 11. To give you an idea that, yes, while Ohio State is running, stopping the run very well right now, it is still very early. However, Toledo is not necessarily the team that can take advantage of it, even though, again, rushing for 230 yards a game, 4.91 yards per carry against Long Island, which is not all that good at all. And I don't know, maybe they were just kneeling down the entire fourth quarter to skew that average. But I don't think Ohio State's going to have too many issues stopping the run. Tom, special teams. I'm just going to throw this out there. I have, in the bold predictions, I alone have predicted Chip Trayanum to return a kickoff for a touchdown. I alone. I did not get this information from a magazine or the television news. I came up with this one all on my own, and I'm feeling quite good about it, especially when you consider how often Toledo kicks off without having touchbacks. However, I don't have them kicking off a lot in this game, which concerns me.
Yeah, it feels like he's, Chip Trayanum is I'm super intrigued to see Chip Trayanum return to kickoff, just because I'm super intrigued to see Chip Trayanum return to kickoff. It's almost like watching Beanie Wells return to kickoff or something back in the day. It is a combination of size and speed that you don't see in the kick return game very often. So I will be very intrigued to see if that happens. You said that we were at interviews on Wednesday night, and you brought that up as, kind of called dibs on that for the bold prediction show. And it was like, yeah, I could see that. I mean, it's just, I am very, very intrigued to see what he can do in the kick game. This is also an opportunity. You saw Emeka Egbuka run back a punt last week for a touchdown that got called back, but there may be more opportunities in the punt game than the kick return game on Saturday for Ohio State. But yeah, it does feel like they might be able to, put some points on the board, or at least give themselves a very short field in that kick game somewhere, just because, Toledo is a very good MAC team, but Toledo does not at any point on their schedule outside of the Ohio State game, they do not see skill talent like they're going to be facing on Saturday. So that's, how often do we hear guys talk about, they faster than they look on film? Like that feels like that's, you can feel like you can feel like you have a plan, and then, the angles that you can normally take are not the angles you can take on Saturday. So that's the kind of thing that could lead to a big play.
Now that I'm looking at more of Toledo's stats, I'm regretting a bold prediction that I did not make, which is, Tom, this is something that has not happened ever this year. Toledo will allow a punt return.
A punt return.
They have not allowed a punt return this season. I think a punt. So Emeka Egbuka might get some revenge on last week's botched touchdown attempt. So who knows if they can cover? All we know right now is they can force some fair catches, and I think we're going to see how well they can cover. And Tom, the Buckeyes want a touchdown back on that one, and Taraji Mitchell certainly. The block in the back, certainly, they have to be itching, and Emeka wants one.
Yeah, I'm sure. And just looking at the photos from last week of Emeka running that down the field, the excitement on the sidelines of the guys on the sidelines. There were a couple of guys. Mickey Marotti was standing there stone-faced because Mickey Marotti had seen the penalty flag and knew exactly what it was. But the players on the sideline, a bunch of them were super excited. That's an exciting play. We haven't seen that from Ohio State in a number of years. I think the last punt return was Jalen Marshall in 2014. For a touchdown, and last kick return was Jordan Hall in 2009, 10 for Ohio State. So yeah, it has been a hot minute on both of those. So I'm sure that would be very exciting. This is as good a week as any to predict it, because they will probably have some punt return opportunities, and Emeka Egbuka, I'm sure, is itching for an opportunity to get officially on that stat sheet there.
That would have been the much better bold prediction for me rather than a kickoff return, because I'm going to have about 8 times the opportunities for an Emeka punt return touchdown as opposed to a chip. This is why, Tom, you always win by 1. It's because I don't think about things. But Emeka did say he saw the flag and he knew it was coming back.
Also because I'm better at it than you.
Well, there's no data to support that. But Emeka did say he saw the flag and he's like, you know what? Let's just put this on tape. Basically, like, I'm not, what am I going to do? Just stop running? He's like, I thought we'd put it on tape and, maybe there'd be some flags to cancel everything out and I'd get to keep it. But no, he didn't. So, Tom, let's go ahead and give our predictions on this one. I have sent my prediction in to Mark, my score prediction. I'm not sure if you have. You probably have. Okay. So I went with Ohio State 49-10 to cover and to look good doing it.
I went a little smaller. I went Ohio State 42, Toledo 14. Just and maybe that's a little bit of a backdoor cover for Toledo. They get on the board late, but yeah, this game being 28-7 Ohio State at the half, and then they score one in the third quarter and it's 35-7 and the game's functionally over, and then you kind of have trade touchdowns in the fourth or something like that. Something along those lines feels about right. Where this is not Hawaii. This is not Colorado State. This is not UConn. This is a group of 5 team that has a little bit of a pulse and is probably going to, in that 40th to 50th best team in the country kind of range. So, winning by, you win by 4 touchdowns, like, okay, that's a very solid, respectable win. That is not something anyone affiliated with Ohio State should feel remotely bad about. But that feels like about Right. And they probably pull up a little bit, when in doubt, you're probably pulling up a little bit against an in-state opponent, and Ryan Day and Jason Candle are friends, so Ryan Day's probably not going to try and run it up on him. So I think something in that 42 to 14 kind of range is about in the neighborhood.
Yeah, the friendship thing is a big one, and I did not factor that one in. I was thinking about it before, like a couple of days ago, but as I was doing it now, I was like, well, no, the data shows this, and I didn't factor that one in. But, okay, that will do it then. Unless you have anything else. Do you have anything else, Tom, that you wanted to share?
Just want to remind everyone to make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. We'll have our pre and post game coverage on Saturday. Lots to talk about before the game. We'll have some fun segments before the game. We've got to figure out exactly what we want to do. We've talked about some ambitious stuff. We'll see how much we really do when the rubber hits the road. But then post game, we will have our usual wall to wall post game coverage starting at right at the end of the game. Mark Givler, Devin Radcliffe, post game interviews with players and coaches, Tony and I, the whole shebang. And those late night shows are always kind of fun because usually sort of the end of the day, there's not a whole lot of other football to watch. So you guys are hanging out with us for quite a while. So make sure you join us there, youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. The more of you guys are there, the better those shows are because the more we get to answer your questions, interact with you guys and all that. That's what makes those fun. So make sure you join us there.
Yeah, it is fun. And as always, the best part of the night is when we get done with that and then you and Kevin realize, oh, we have to record the morning show. And that's always fun for me. It's fun for everybody. And so I want to thank you all for joining us as always. And again, check us out at BuckeyeHuddle.com. If you're not yet a member, give us a try, see what you think. If you are a member, thank you very much for that. And so that will do it for today. Y'all have a good one.